1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some sort of physical or emotional abuse by intimate partners or even family members. It's likely someone you know, or perhaps even you, have endured abuse. I'm Shirley Freeman, partner of Lingerie Briefs online magazine. We've collaborated with Jacob Miller of Purple Boudoir Photography, along with Heidi Morrison, owner of Heidi's Leather and Lace Boutique. Both are founders of Purple Strong, a resource for survivors and victims. Survivor Stories Lingerie Briefs online column presents domestic violence survivors in a way that showcases how empowered and attractive these victors feel wearing beautiful lingerie strictly for themselves. All these women and models have been photographed beautifully by Jacob Miller. These stories are brave examples of hope and victory. In conjunction with Purple Strong, we present this video of survivors who share their experiences, their escape, and their healing process. Lingerie Brief Survivor Stories video features profiles of individuals who we call ambassadors that openly share their experiences about domestic violence and abuse. The aim is to use these personal narratives as a starting point for open and honest discussions focused on strategies for preventing and providing support for those affected. This is a very big issue nationally, and every person in every community needs to play a role in addressing it. Raising awareness and initiating conversations about how we can support victims and hold abusers accountable can lead to significant progress in preventing domestic violence. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, help is available by contacting the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24 hours a day.
Hi, I'm Heidi, and I'm a domestic violence survivor.
Thanks for joining us today, Heidi. Can you please share your story about your past abusive situation?
Yes, my abuse started early in childhood, which led to an abusive marriage of 20 years. It was emotional and mental and sexual, and not so much physical. So I had a hard time identifying as a domestic abuse victim.
Can you explain what tactics your abuser used that made it so difficult for you to get out of the situation?
Financial control was a big one. Isolation as well. It made it very difficult for me to go anywhere. I felt very trapped. I also had young children at home, and it was a lot to manage to figure out how to get us all out safely.
It must have been very scary when you were getting ready to leave. How did you manage that safely?
Because I wasn't able to go to the police, having not been physically abused, I decided that my plan was to slowly escape. I started putting money away silently. I started making a plan to move, finding a safe place, getting an attorney, having somebody that knew what was going on, because honestly, I hid everything very well for a very long time. It was very hard for anybody to believe me, let alone imagine that that was going on in our home. So just having one safe person to call was extremely important.
What resources have helped you in your recovery?
Therapy. I would see more than one therapist at a time. I tried different types of therapies, from EMDR to trauma-informed therapy, IFS, and somatic therapy. I had a lot of trauma that was stored in my body, and all of those things combined helped me on my path to recovery.
How do you feel abusive relationships affect a woman's sexuality?
I would say, how don't they? Because I was emotionally abused, mentally abused, and sexually abused. They all work together. So what that looked like for me was being body shamed. My appearances were shamed. I was told things like I wasn't good in bed. All these things took away my self-worth. And ultimately, I didn't know myself anymore, and I couldn't connect to myself in that way anymore. There was no intimacy. There was no, I'd say, compassion or passion. And there was no consent. So they all worked together to keep me bound.
Looking back from then to now, you must be very proud of how far you've come. What does your future look like?
My future has been so amazing. It's been almost 4 years now that I've left. I've always been an entrepreneur and a successful businesswoman. But this journey has led me on a path I never expected. You know, when I left not only my relationship, but my hometown, I left my house, I left everything I knew. I was packing my home, and I took down my wedding portrait from the wall. And I looked at it, and I promised myself that I would replace it with a beautiful photo of myself. And so the first thing I did when I relocated to the Midwest was book a boudoir photography session. And it was really the first thing I had ever done for myself. It was the first time that I felt beautiful and confident again. And I realized that, oddly enough, lingerie was a very important way for me to reconnect to myself. And so I've opened my own lingerie store here in Chicago. I focus on mostly women-owned businesses, small designers that I can build a relationship with. Honestly, most of them know my story and we've become friends. That's been very important to me to have them on my side. And, you know, it's a creative expression for them as well. So I find brands from all over the world, usually small and unknown, and it really gives me a lot of passion every day to do this for a living.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for sharing your story. That was great.
Thank you.
Somebody call Roland.
I'm Jacob.
I am Jacob, and I am a domestic violence survivor.
Jacob, what's your experience with abuse?
I discovered in my 40s in therapy that it went back to my childhood as early as since time began. I had a very lovable, funny, charismatic, generous dad who was also violent sometimes. And so we lived in a house where, you know, I think it was described as a bomb that could go off at any time, whether you say the right thing or the wrong thing. So it was capricious like that.
How did it affect you in your early adult life?
Well, I guess in my 20s and 30s, the way I'd sum it up is I was a very angry young man. And that anger came out sideways. I think that's called passive aggressive. I hadn't learned how to be honest with myself. I didn't know really what was wrong with me. I had a dangerously low self-esteem, a danger to myself and to people around me. Later, I found out my core belief is I didn't think I should be alive because of the beatings, the physical beatings I got as a kid.
When did you realize you needed help?
In my early 40s, so I'm 61 now, which blows my mind. In my early 40s, I had developed these really serious panic attacks where in the middle of the day, I would collapse from exhaustion. I think that's too much adrenaline in the body, and then you become exhausted. And I also, you know, I would call 911 in the middle of the day. I think I crashed my car once or twice because I was hyperventilating on Lakeshore Drive once, and then by my house once in Lakeview. And I would call 911, and the emergency workers would show up and ask me what's going on. And I remember this one time towards the end, I said, standing like this, "You don't see them?" And then EMT was like, "What?" I'm like, "Lions are tearing my arms apart." Like I was having hallucinations. Like that's bad. like daymare. I was seeing things. That's not normal. And Also, I remember calling my mom. She was still alive at the time. And I said, Mom, don't you just think the world's just turned into this very dangerous, dark, filthy place? That's my lens. That's my head talking. That's the world around is a bunch of things. It's one of those things, but that's all I saw. And I stopped seeing in color. I don't remember being able to see in color for the last couple of years. It was black and white.
What did you do to resolve some of these issues that traumatized you?
I had a panic attack during one set of circumstances and collapsed in front of the Wrigley Building on Michigan Avenue. And I was in tears. I was exploding with anger and sadness and grieving. I had my first sober thought, because alcoholic and everything else. I was pouring drugs and alcohol and behavior and all kind of crazy stuff on top of the feelings because I didn't know how to manage the feelings. So my first sober thought was, if I'm so smart, why am I so miserable? You know, clearly I don't know it all. It was like the first humble thought I ever had in my life, you know. Instead of being angry, I'm like, well, maybe I don't know something. And I called a friend my friend Scott, and I said, please go find for me a therapist. And I told him what I wanted, which was actually not wrong. I said, I want an old man with gray hair who looks like Sigmund Freud with 100 letters after his name. I want to go right to the top. Like, find me, and very directive. I want to be told what to do. I wanted action. I didn't want just prayer circles, you know, kind of a thing. I'm a guy. I like action. So he found the right person, right in Chicago's Loop. I think it's called Working Sobriety, and it was a group addiction recovery. I went to go meet the doctor. Within 10 minutes, he said, you're an abuse survivor, you're an incest survivor, you got to go to a meeting, you can join our group, like you belong. And I'm like, what? But he was so credentialed, I couldn't ignore. He had so much authority, though I couldn't ignore what he said. That evening, I went to my first AA meeting, and it was called Jews Don't Drink. And it was all the way up in California. And I thought the name of the meeting was funny. So I was like, I'm going there because Jews don't drink. I mean, we're supposed to be whatever the hell. So I got there, and there was like a 300-year-old recovered guy that's been sober for 1,000,000 years with the gray hair. He only grumbles. He doesn't even talk anymore. He's been sober longer than I've been alive. I think Eisenhower was in office or something. And he gave a lead, and people were raising their hands and sharing. And for the first time in my life, and I was 44, I looked around and like, holy shit, I'm home. These people sound like me. That was a nice moment.
Yeah. You know, domestic violence is really less heard about.
It is.
It is. And why don't you think more men don't want to speak out about it?
It's rare in men. It's rare that it's spoken about with women, although it's becoming more acceptable. I think we spend so much time in denial, minimizing, normalizing what the abuse is. Like, I thought my family was normal. No, the truth was, we grew up in a 1960s, 1970s version of The Sopranos. I had a big fat father who had a lot of money, and he was a bully. So it sounds like a Soprano. We had a Cadillac with the fins. You know, we went to synagogue. Mom had fur coats and jewelry, and just my father had a plane, like he owned a plane. Like, you know, that veneer of a wealthy Jewish, you know, New York, New Jersey area people didn't fit in with that. My dad was also shooting heroin in the basement. Crazy, you know, and then so it was a cover. And I think I thought that was a normal family until I got into therapy. I'm like, maybe this is not, other families don't grow up this way, you know? So I think that's a cover, is we make, because kids want to be loved, right? So whatever the parent is, that's got to be love. We'll just redefine love as that, you know, like in my example, if you loved me, you'd hit me. What? No, I mean, that's how I grew up. So I was looking for a fight until I was 44. And then I started learning how to stop looking for a fight, stop fighting myself. I really think that's what was going on.
Well, now, today, tell us how you support other survivors through your photography business.
I'd be happy to. So I'm 16 years sober. It's kind of like a birthday to me. Like when I finally got help and realized I, had some growing to do and learning how to. So I had always been a photographer. My mom was an artist and taught me how to take pictures in the 70s on a Canon A1. I think it was an A1 metal body camera. And I'd always been interested in doing a fundraiser. So my brother it was actually my brother's idea. He said, Jake, you're like in the middle of my recovery. He's like, you should choose domestic violence as your social mission because you're so noisy about it. Because that's what happens with sober people. They get very noisy for a while. I listened to him and went and found an organization here in Chicago, a not-for-profit called Wings. They were nothing but loving and supportive for what I was doing. And I paired it with boudoir photography because I love boudoir photography. It's empowering for women. I'm something of a male feminist advocate, I suppose. We live in Andersonville. Guess my politics, that kind of a thing. So I put the two together, and then I just said, please donate to the shelter instead of paying a session fee, and you come here and have the experience. And that seems to have caught everyone's attention. We're all over the news about that, et cetera. I do want to tack on, going backwards, how I got better. It wasn't just therapy. It wasn't just sitting in a group. I did group therapy, by the way. A lot of people don't do that, but all your family stuff comes up. Like you elect people in a group to represent whatever you grew up with. You adopt roles and things. But I also did, 12-step, went to a couple fellowships, men's groups. I went to the Mankind Project. That's men sitting in a circle and interrupting one another, which is kind of more my style. Did that for years and made lifetime friends in that. I learned how to get along with other men, right? Because I think we recover in relationship to one another. We don't recover off in the corner alone. It needs relationship with other healthy people, actually. So sometimes we need to take ourselves out of the family of origin and put ourselves in a new family. People talk about that. They talk about family of choice. I think that's what they're talking. I found healthy people to hang around with. They love me in a new way. That's first. So I did a lot of that. And even martial arts. 16 years I've been doing jiu-jitsu, which I teach it now, which is fun. And that was a good physical outlet for what I'm doing. And I don't think you need to do what I did, but you do need to find a couple different modalities that kind of mix and match. That's an art form. You can be an artist in our own, we can be artists in our own recovery, like what we choose and when. Did you have another question?
No, I want to just thank you for sharing.
I want to thank you.
I think you appreciate it, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of other people.
Yeah, you don't have to look like me. I think that's the other thing about why do men. It's the core of the story. Like if you can identify with any piece of this story, and realize I was an extreme case, with the hallucinations and I felt like a homeless person. My doctor, Jeffrey Roth, he said I was a very advanced case one day, and that terrified me. What did he mean by that? But if you go read the big book, there's a whole chapter on advanced cases. If I can get better, and I am better, I'm fundamentally joyful, happy to wake up every day, amazed I'm still here. I feel useful in society. I've a dignified, useful thing that I'm doing with my art making. I'm using it to raise awareness and help other people. So you can transform what happened to you into art making or helping other people. I think we've heard that in other interviews. So it feels nice to belong. I think I'd like to end with that.
Thank you, Survivor.
You're very welcome, interviewer. All right, we're finally sitting together.
It's been amazing to meet you.
And likewise. I mean,
Yep. First, I'm Jacob Miller.
I'm Heidi Morrison.
And Shirley Freeman.
And what are we doing together, Shirley?
Well, I'm a partner of Lingerie Briefs, the online magazine, and you connected with us. And
did.
tell us why and how and why.
I'm a boudoir photographer and founder of Purple Boudoir here in Chicago, the planet's only boudoir studio, I think, that has a social mission to end domestic violence. So I'm kind of alone on that. It seemed to me that lingerie and boudoir photography are sisters, if you will. Both are very intimidating to your workaday person, and yet also are related in that they help people embrace sensuality in their own body. And it just seemed like it would be an interesting conversation.
It worked out to be a sort of a natural fit.
Yeah.
So therefore because of you guys, we started a column called Survivor Stories. But before we do that, why don't we talk about how Heidi, who is a survivor, got involved in this?
Well, like everyone else, I saw one of Jacob's ads and reached out because I thought, you know what, this is exactly why I just opened my lingerie boutique. And obviously lingerie and boudoir photography, I mean, you can't have one without the other. So I put a call into him. Thank you. There was an immediate response. And I think when we met, it was kismet. It was just meant to be. And I think Jacob was still kind of grappling with how boudoir photography did help domestic survivors, domestic abuse survivors. And so I was happy to fill him in on how that all works as, survivor myself. And it was the first thing I had done for myself, boudoir photography. So
you crushed your first photo shoot with here. That was really fun.
We have a lot of fun working together too.
We do. We do. And that's anyone who's started a little business will tell you, I think the hardest thing is actually doing it alone. It's not the hard work. It's not the long hours. It's not the terror of financial things.
Right.
It's just nobody to talk to. And then Heidi and I can't shut up. So we just so you understand, we're in our photo studio here, but we have 2 more spaces downstairs. We're in an arts building in the West Loop. Heidi's lingerie boutique is right next to my little showroom office space, and we're building
with the same people you do. So
yeah, our clients come and have coffee with both of us. They go shopping with Heidi, and I plan their photo shoot.
And then we tell their stories on Lingerie Briefs with your photography, and we interview a lot of the survivors. And I'll tell you what, we have gotten some amazing attention to this story, so much so that now we're doing this on a much larger scale, where you are photographing in beautiful lingerie that we're helping procure for the shoots. We're telling the stories, and now we're going to be bringing this on a bigger stage in New York at Curve, New York. So I want to thank you for doing all that, and it's for a great cause, and we hope to create a lot of awareness and hopefully raise some money as well as for a lot of these domestic abuse
survivors, or the organizations.
Yep.
My vision has been, our vision collectively has been growing by working together. The idea that we could have purple ambassadors that each brand could adopt or sponsor and could represent their brand. These are grown women, kids, careers, stories, human beings, relatable. And they could be showcased as that brand's ambassador. Makes in my mind, would do for the lingerie brand what it's done for my little boudoir studio. I'm all over we're all over the news because it's interesting. So your brand would become very interesting and relatable.
That's the hope. So let's hope that does that. But we're excited to present.
You can never have too much awareness about it.
Yeah, that's right. We're excited to
We're
present this video for everybody to see. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, guys.
All right, take care.
Hi, I'm Dana Erickson. I am a mom of 2 beautiful children. I am also a professional therapist. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have my own private practice in Indiana. I have been in private practice for almost 20 years. And I am a domestic violence and sexual assault survivor.
Wonderful. Would you please maybe spend a minute or so describing what the abuse looked like? Like, how old were you and what was happening? What was going on?
So this is interesting. I'm going to take the sexual assault piece first because I didn't really know, there was like all these little snippets in my life over time that I would get a little snippet of something and I would dismiss it or dissociate really. And I separated and from my ex-husband now and started dating. And through that, all of this trauma that I didn't know was there came flooding back. So there was a ton of it.
Tell us about a time when, for a soundbite.
A time when my best friend, when I was 13, she was female. She sexually abused me while we were in my room.
Presumably playing.
Oh no, we were not playing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I
I was 13, so.
Yeah. What's the earliest, if you can thread back? There's always a string tied to the
I'm not really
earliest.
sure because one of my abusers was my uncle. So I'm not really sure. But what I remember as far back is probably 7.
Tell us about 7.
I remember being in a bed with my uncle and one of the things that I've learned being a therapist is that, we have this beautiful thing called dissociation that we do in order to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
And so the things that I remember feeling uncomfortable. And I remember his breath on my back. And I remember the smell of alcohol. Those are the things that I remember. But I know as a therapist that something happened. I don't have a frame for what it was that happened actually.
How did the early abuse manifest itself in young adulthood before you found your professional career track and your own healing journey? How did it show up?
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's all intertwined.
Mhm.
So I remember when my parents separated and divorced, I started fixing my dad. My dad went through a significant depression, and I created report cards for him. So there were singing lessons and there were dancing lessons, and I was 11 years old, and I was learning that I had to fix people, right? And heal people. And that was a way for me to check out of what was happening to me and focus on somebody else. So that way I could survive that. Then after my parents divorced, I started using lots of drugs, starting at age 11. And I didn't really slow down until it got to a point where my best friend cornered me and said, listen, you need to stop. You're going to kill yourself. Like it was that significant. And we had a long talk and I credit him for like saving my life. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go out with a bang and bang it up for New Year's Eve. And then I'm done. And I quit everything.
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey. Quit everything.
That leads us to, how did you get better? What modalities, what things did you do to recover from your abuse?
Right. Well, I want to add something to the
please.
Original question. The other thing that happened that manifested, and I need to even go back a little bit more. My mom was significantly abusive. She was verbally and emotionally abusive. She was cruel. She wrote 10 years of diaries, and she talked about things every day. She was using drugs with both my brother and I while she was pregnant. It would be very physical abusive when we were young.
Mm-hmm.
And so hence fast forward, I'm 15. I get into this really bad relationship with this guy. I end up having to take him to court. Of course, nobody, I lost a lot of friends and all of this stuff. Next relationship, more abuse. And then, I thought I got into a really good marriage but I was a little girl. I was 19 years old. And, and I dissociated for most of my life. So I started doing therapy when my son was, I don't know if I was pregnant with him or if he was just a little boy. I had a postpartum depression and I started doing therapy, and I've been doing therapy. I'm a therapist who believes in therapy.
Hmm.
So I actually do my own work. I'm a certified hypnotherapist. So I do a lot of deep work. I've done a lot of deep work. So I have just learned over the years how I have shut down. And that was my coping. And now I'm not shut down.
How do you know you're not shut down?
So how do I know I'm not shut down? I feel feelings.
Mhm.
I'm gonna cry. I feel feelings.
Yeah.
And there was a time in my life when I didn't feel anything. I would just be fixing everybody and I wouldn't know. I know that I'm healing because I'm not codependent like I was. I know that I know that I can talk to people without getting triggered. That's how I know I'm healing. I know that I'm healing when I decide, after as a celebratory kind of thing to myself, a gift to myself, to come and do boudoir pictures. And I find this song that, how the hell did this come up on my playlist? But Bird Flight Free from Sia. And I cried the entire way here. Got my shit together and I did these pictures, and it was one of the most freeing experiences I've ever had. And that's how I know. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that.
Hmm.
So
Pretty sharp. Good work. Today, how do you show up in relationships today differently? How do you show up for life differently? By the way, how many years in therapy for you?
probably 30 plus, 32 maybe.
Okay, not a
Yeah.
minute.
Not a minute.
32 years of therapy. What's life other than feelings? Because we're clear that you have emotions, it shows. But how do you show up in your relationships today?
I think I'm much more direct.
Yeah.
I think that I don't allow things that I used to allow.
Mhm.
If someone's hurting me, I express that they're hurting me and why they're hurting me. And I do it in a way. I used to be very angry and I would just like tell people off and get aggressive. And I think I'm very conscious about, like, I don't want to hurt you. I love you. And so I try to do it in a way that is not hurtful, but also expressing my own feelings. But I don't allow people to walk on me. I don't all the time. Still a battle sometimes. I don't try to fix. If somebody's struggling, I'll offer.
Mhm.
Do you want some suggestion on that? Or sometimes I'll say, I can put my therapy hat on right now if you want, or you can say no. And sometimes people say no, which is good. So I just communicate better. I feel better. I feel present. I mean, there was a time where I felt like I wasn't even in my body most of the time.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm in my body. I think I love myself more.
Mhm.
I think I'm more free and open. I can do things now in relationships that I never thought I could do. I experiment. I'm vulnerable. That's very, very different from who I was.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds really lovely.
It is great.
Um,
Makes me very happy. I'm a very happy. I think I've always been pretty happy, but it's extraordinarily happy.
I
now.
have an observation for you.
Yeah.
I was there for your boudoir photo shoot, and I remember you grabbed your photographer. It was Corinne,
Yes,
and you did a little photo at the end, and you grabbed her and you gave her a smooch on her cheek.
I did.
So you're affectionate. You're not afraid to be affectionate.
I'm not afraid to be. I am a hugger. Yes, I am not afraid to be affectionate.
That was a lovely moment.
Yeah, was a lovely moment. Mhm.
Before we close,
Yeah.
let's frame this question as advice for your younger self. If you could time travel, and big you had little you,
Mhm.
if little you could listen, or would listen to you, what would you
Yeah.
have to offer her?
I would tell her it gets better. That therapy works, healing works, gets better. I would tell her to listen more intently to her inner soul, her inner power, and to really question who she should be trusting and not trusting. And there's a lot of people in my life that I've trusted that it should have never been trusted. So I would tell her to listen to herself more.
Yeah. Beautifully done.
Hi, I'm Shonda from Chicago, and I am a 3-time survivor of domestic abuse.
Shonda, please share with us your most recent experience with an abusive relationship.
Well, my last abusive relationship, I was married for 5 years, together almost 7. It was started off subtly, and when you're in love with someone, you have a tendency to minimalize the things that are occurring, or you overlook things and you have a tendency to brush it off. And it went on for many, many years. And finally, I got fed up with feeling the way that I was feeling about the situation and feeling less of a person, feeling less empowered, feeling like I was worthless, and questioning myself as to why this kept happening to me. So the incident that finally pushed me over the edge is we were getting ready to go for my birthday on a trip, and he came in drunk, and I asked him had he been drinking, and he just attacked me. And I finally said enough is enough. I'm through with this, and I had him arrested and removed from the home. I end up returning for various reasons due to not being able to afford the place by myself at the time because I was part-time. So it was a financial issue. And also, when I attempted to go to a shelter, my daughter was not allowed to be a part of the shelter because of she would not be there full time. So I had to make some tough decisions about myself and what was in the best interest of not only myself, but for my daughter. And so he eventually returned to the home. Everything continued. Nothing really changed, even though he was going through the patterns through the programs that was required for the domestic violence. Eventually, I said, I can't do this anymore because my daughter is also watching me. And I'm letting her know that this is okay. And it's not. So I decided to file a restraining order on him. He was removed from the home and he was gone for over 2 years when we finally got divorced July 1st of 2024.
When were you first able to be willing to talk about your experiences?
Well, throughout the years and my various relationships that I've experienced, I've had several family members and my best friend that have always been there for me and just would constantly listen to me. So I've been talking about it for a very long time, but the willingness to actually take action and say enough is enough, it took quite some time. So I just, like I said, I got tired of going through the same thing over and over again.
What has helped you since leaving to rebuild your life and your self-esteem?
Well, the first thing is making up my mind that nobody is good unless I can't be good for anyone else unless I'm good for myself. So I had to make up my mind that enough was enough. And I had to be good for myself because I can't be good for my daughter. I can't be good for anyone else in a relationship, family, or friends if I'm not good for myself. So that was my initial point. And then I sought professional help. So I see a psychiatrist regularly. I also went through several treatments of this thing called TMS. And then I also have counseling regularly. So that was the biggest step, my initial step to recovery.
How does the future look to you right now?
Oh, my future looks very, very bright. I mean, so many things have changed. So many things have improved. I have a wonderful career. I've opened my own business. As a travel agent, home-based travel agent, and I also have opened my social and travel club. I've partnered with a few clubs that we're doing club promotions. So I'm also seeking to get back into modeling. and everything like that. So all the opportunities have really started to come once I've made the decision to seek out and do better for myself.
Now, you said you don't necessarily consider yourself a survivor. What's your term?
My term is an overcomer, because a survivor means that you're still holding on. To me, overcoming. And I had to learn to overcome the situations that I dealt with, because if I show that I'm an overcomer and I've let not allow my past to dictate my future, then I'm able to be an encouragement to other people to let them know if I did it, you can do it too.
Thank you very much for sharing your beautiful story.
Thank you. Woo! I'm sweating.
Hey, I'm Rene David Flores. I'm from Mexico, and I'm 39 years old. I live in Chicago. I am a makeup artist and hairstylist, and I have my own business. I do hair and makeup for brides, for special occasions, photo shoots, and my story is about domestic violence. So
When did it? Thank you. So you identify as a domestic violence survivor.
domestic
Yes.
violence.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with that. Like what age you were, who was there, what happened.
Well, all of this began when my mom and my dad. So I grew up, with them, with a lot violence from my dad, and maybe because I'm the youngest of my family, maybe that will be normal for me. So I grew up and I was, looking for love and for someone to take care of me, and so I found this person and we got married. We have a long distance relationship for almost 2 years. I was living in Mexico and he was living here in Chicago. So we have a long distance relationship for almost 2 years. So after that, we decided to get married. And that's why I, had to take the decision to move to Chicago. So for me, it was so difficult because I left everything. I left my family, I left my job, I left everything, and so for love. So after that,
How long were you married?
for almost 8 years. So the first 2 years, that was, a little complicated because everything was new for me. And living with this person or living with someone is difficult. So living with this person is like, it was like so stressful for me because I was new in the city and all of this, it was new for me. So I had to, because my condition in this country or in this city was like, finding, new opportunities and trying to, to have my green card and everything. So this person approached, of that, and he take advantage of that because I was literally a baby in this, and here, and so he was, treating me to me, like, okay, you leave me, you're gonna have, your green card, you're not, you can see your family or your friends. And I was, okay, so I need to be here, like, and follow the orders, and everything. So after that, I'm a cancer survivor, and during my treatment, my family wants to, wanted to be here, support me, and he was, like against, he wants to be alone with me.
Yeah.
And so my mom, she was here, and the first night when she was, after she arrived, he was drunk and he was, insulting me, he was hitting me in front of my mom. And so after that, I had to take the decision, like, okay, I need to stop this. I need to stop this because my life is first, and I was remember, like everything my mom, has to pass, with my father. And I was like, you know what? I need to cut out, with this chain, with this cycle, of violence or everything, you know. So unfortunately, you know, my mom, she passed away like a month ago. And
A month ago today?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, David. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she teach me how to be strong, how to be strong, how to survive, how to, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud, you know, of whatever, you know, what I'm doing now. I'm so proud of it. And if you are listening to me or someone is listening to me, you're not alone.
That's beautiful.
You're not alone. And people like them, you know, you need to avoid, you know, and keep strong. And I learned something when I was with my cancer and I was, you know, with my mom and everything, you know, here alone in this city. Surviving, you know, every day.
What did you do? How do you take care of yourself? What do you do to be good and kind to yourself? That would be interesting for people.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I decided, you know, to, you know, continue my life with my doggy, with my little doggy. He's my support and everything. And because he left me, you know, with no money, with no papers, with nothing. And I had to go with a friend, you know, because I was homeless. And I was, you know, looking to come back to my hometown with my family. But my mom, she told me, like, no, you are there and you need to be strong. And so...
David, take a breath. You have a lot of feeling right now. Just breathe. Just breathe for a minute. You're good. You're safe. You're fine. You're warm. Clearly, you're in a good, stable place in your life. Come back to the moment for a minute. You know what I mean? Like, come back to now. You've been through a lot. Just breathe. That sounds better. Welcome back. Tell us for this next part, maybe, how do you take care of yourself? Is it therapy or church groups or 12-step or some sort of, kind of support, what other kind of human support did you reach out for to get better?
Well, I have my therapist, you know, my family. First of all, my family, because my uncle and my aunt, they are therapists and they are helping me every time. My doggy, he's helping me. He's my support animal.
Sure.
And he was with me with my cancer and with every step, you know, in my life. And my doggy is my everything. My mom, she was with me. And she's still with me.
Yeah, of course.
And friends, people, you know, and my work, people that I know, you know, every day, you know. But first of all, my job, because this is my passion. Being a makeup artist and hairstylist is my passion when I was a little kid. And this is, you know, like, makes me feel happy.
We can tell. You're a wonderful makeup artist.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Go back in time to a younger self when you were just getting married and your abusive husband was controlling and manipulating you. What would you say to him? Or what would you say to yourself? How would you coach yourself in that situation?
Well, every time when I was, you know, dealing with this person and all the situations, you know, in that time, I was just, you know, like grabbing my dog and walk and just thinking, you know, in a positive way and saying, you know, say every time, you know, like, okay, this is temporarily. This is not forever. This is temporarily. And when I had to take the decision to continue my life with this person, I was, you know, like walking with my doggy and I watched a building and I was thinking, you know, in my future, I'm there, you know, living in my dream and living in my own apartment with my own things.
So visualization.
I visualize.
That's
I have my
powerful.
vision, and I have I want to be there, and thank God and thank to the life, thank to, you know, my dream come true.
Well, with hard work, I imagine, because you're almost divorced. I think you said you're.
Yes, my divorce is in. He never responded my petition.
Yeah.
So I have to be honest. I was like a little, you know, we're all, you know, together, you know, by my mom and everything, you know, and this, like, okay, he never respond. No, I always say this is what I had to do.
Yeah.
And so in January, I'm gonna have my, you know, appointment, you know, with the trial and everything to solve this problem.
So
but it's not anymore a problem. So I'm happy now because now it's gone.
So please invite us to the celebration.
Yes, let's celebrate.
We'd love to help you celebrate.
I need to make a party, maybe.
Yeah, of course. You know.
What's up, everyone? My name is Erica Marie Avila. I am a plus-size model and assigned actress with Gale Talent Agency here in Chicago, Illinois. Born and raised, Southeast Side. I am a mother of 3, 44 as of 2024, and my oldest child, which is my son, made me a grandma. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
So I'm going to go way back to my childhood, right? And so I am a domestic violence survivor. I like to say I am a survivor because that was my ammo for my ambition. And that was the start of me starting a whole new career, especially with body positivity and diversity and inclusion. It goes way back from generations after generations. And I said that I was going to be the one to break that generational curse of domestic violence and abuse within my family.
So what did
And
it look like when you were younger? Or
so my mom left my father when I was a baby. I don't even think I was 1 year old.
Mhm.
So my mom raised me and my 2 sisters on her own. She was a battered woman. My father was very physically abusive. He went to the service, and I don't know if he had PTSD, but he was very violent. And she left before I can witness any of that. So she's taught me to walk away. She's taught me to be strong and, you know, not take abuse. But there were certain abusive treatments that I was conditioned to that I didn't realize were forms of abuse within a relationship.
from her?
Yeah.
Okay.
So from her being a victim, she transitioned into picking up traits where now she became very aggressive and verbally abusive. I want to say emotionally abusive to, you know, me and my sisters, physically as well. I mean, our whooping was like some major.
It was a little extra.
It was pretty harsh. So we got beat pretty bad, especially
Yeah.
myself. I was the youngest of 3 and I was
Yeah.
pretty mischievous.
Sure. So do you have any sound bites from like your from what the verbal aggression sounded like?
Bitch.
Wow.
I mean, on a regular daily basis.
Okay.
We were called every name in the book. As I got older, you know, it was hoe, whore. You know, just
Okay.
so how do you see the red flags, right? Within a relationship when you've been told these things on a regular basis since
Got it. So that's a beautiful pause for a moment. Let's now shift into when did you wake up? That you weren't raised that wasn't a normal childhood. Like, what was your wake up call? And what's your recovery like? What things did you do to get better?
Sure. So some of the things that I did was say I wanted to get educated, right?
Mhm.
And so I wanted to unlearn some of the things that I had been taught. And again, you know, if you want to see change, it starts with you. And so I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. I tried to bring people with me, but of course, if they're still within a toxic behavior, they're going to be reluctant to that, right? And so I was the bad guy at that point. And it almost made me fearless and resilient. So as bad as it was to have to go through that treatment from your own mother, it was also very easy for me to walk away, right? From men who were disrespectful and abusive within the
Right.
relationship.
Because you could recognize it.
I could recognize it, but sometimes I accepted certain behavior, right? And so blindsided or dummy down, you kind of dummy yourself down to disrespect when you like somebody.
And so I think attachment is harder than love. And so one of the ways that I even got into that relationship with the guy who was super abusive, which was my first ex-husband, was because I was almost running away from home, right? I was still dealing with things at home with my mom.
Boomer, ricochet type of thing.
Yeah, the first time I got married, I wound up marrying my father. The second time I got married, didn't realize I was still dealing with childhood trauma and didn't self-reflect enough, hadn't grown enough within myself, hadn't healed. Second time around, I married my mother. And so having to deal with a different form of abuse because it wasn't physical, it was just emotional, verbal, and financially controlling. Having to walk away from that was one of the hardest things that I had to do because there wasn't physical abuse.
Right.
So everything wasn't as obvious, right? Like his forms of controlling me, because my mother was very controlling. It wasn't super obvious. I was very submissive.
At that time. I don't get that. I'm not reading that from you right now.
No. I mean,
It's compliment.
I'm very vocal. I'm very expressive. Those are some of the things that, even though my mom had these abusive behaviors, she also taught us to be independent and, you know, walk away and not put up with anything. So she led me in that sense to be, you know, like, hey, I'm not going to tolerate that. But you put up with a lot of crap, right? And so I put up with a lot of crap until I realized, I don't like this. I don't like the way this makes me feel.
So what kinds of support were you able to find in order to heal? Was it just, did you read a book, get a therapist, go to synagogue, go to church? What worked for you?
So I wound up becoming, in my second marriage, I wound up becoming toxic and abusive myself. When I didn't like myself anymore because I was aggressive and I was verbally being disrespectful as well. It was just like it was just a toxic relationship. So that back and forth that just didn't feel good because I was out of character. I went to domestic violence training and got certified in that. And that's how I became an advocate for domestic violence. And that's when I realized that my childhood trauma was still affecting me.
Sure.
Right. And then I'm going to be honest, I went to God. I went to prayer. I went to my faith. I went to, you know, just believing that there was something more for me versus just this repetitive cycles and lifestyles. I just didn't want it.
So education, which is the DV awareness, and faith, your system of faith. That's where all the emotion and the deeper spiritual work would, that's where you did your work.
Yeah. And I had a very good support system. I have a lot of friends and family. We've always been very open. I'm very transparent. So it wasn't hard for me to talk about it. But one of the biggest things that is the reason for my strength and my reason for being an advocate is because my cousin was murdered.
Okay.
And so when she was murdered and my first ex-husband showed up to that funeral and said that should be me in a casket. That's when I'm like, I'm done being quiet. I'm done having people dim my light. I'm done. So from me saying like, you know, I'm going to stand up for myself, and not only going to stand up for myself, I'm going to stand up for the people who are shy. I'm not shy. So let me go ahead and take a stand for everybody and just bring awareness.
Absolutely beautiful. Any advice to your younger self that you can give your younger self with the camera pointed at you? Do you have any words if you were to be in the same room with yourself at a younger age?
Don't be rebellious.
Don't?
Well, you can be. I mean, I want to say that I was self-destructive as a young child because of the abuse that I endured at home. And so because I was always just doing things to get myself in trouble, maybe I carried that on within my relationships. And so I would say, like, I tell my little one, I have a 7-year-old, and I tell her all the time, you know, good girls are the best. You know, when I was little, I thrived on being bad, you know, and I no longer, you know, want to be a bad girl. I want to be a good girl. So
you're not
I
a rebel without a cause.
Yeah. And, you know, I can be fearless, but I can do that without disrespecting anybody. And
Wonderful.
so the one thing I would tell people is learn what a healthy relationship looks like and know the difference between an unhealthy one.
Amen to that.
We want to thank all these survivors for sharing their stories, giving voice to the experiences of pain and suffering, alongside the strength and hope that survivors embody is a profound act. This video is produced in part by Lingerie Briefs, Purple Boudoir Photography, Heidi's Leather and Lace, and Purple Strong. With special thanks to Curve New York, the premier lingerie trade show in North America, for featuring this video to highlight the importance of lingerie to both women and men who have come through this journey of abuse.